If there's one thing I would love to bequeath to my children, which of course I wish I also had for myself in greater fullness, it's the ability to live as if I have even before I have. That instead of living in the fear of how am I going to get the money to pay my mortgage, and then when I get the money, of course, I no longer have to be worry about it or fear what will happen because I have it. But imagine if I was already living as if I have the money before I have the money, or any other need in life, whether it be health, that I can live now as if I know that I will have this good health, even though right now I am not well, and therefore I am very calm. That is what we call in English trust, the ability to trust that everything will be fine, to trust that God will bless me, God will give me. This is, in Hebrew, the word bitachon. Bitachon is to trust, and that is to live now, even before I received, as I will live after I received. It's the most powerful thing in the world. Someone who has $50 million is very wealthy, but very often they are very poverty-stricken in their mind. And if one is poverty-stricken in their mind, then all of the money in the world does not make them wealthy, because they live in a state of poverty while in the midst of a lot of money. And then you can have someone who has very little money. However, they live in a very rich mind, a very rich mindset, that they have what they need, they'll have more, things are going to get better, they trust. And that is a person who is very rich. And if you encounter these two people, one of them you'll see as very closed down, as very fearful, as very hard to part with $1, And then you have this other person who has very little, and they're besimcha, they're happy, they're gracious, they're generous. It's a whole different. Which one of those people would you like to be? Now, of course, I bless every one of us to have both. However, the first and the critical one, far more important one to have, is the mindset to be rich in mind, not simply rich in pocket. In this week's Torah portion of Eikev, the Torah tells us that when Moshe recounts, as he does through the entire book of Deuteronomy, Moshe is speaking, and he says, he speaks about the manna, the great gift God gave the Jewish people, which is the manna that fell from heaven. Imagine that. You have to go out to work every single day and earn a living so you can buy your food. And the Jewish people were living in a utopian environment in the desert. Food fell down from heaven every single day. And yet, when Moshe describes manna, how does he describe it? He says, Vaya'ancha, Vayarivecha, Vayachilcha es haman. And Vaya'ancha, and I afflicted you, Vayarivecha, and I starved you, or I hungered you, and I fed you the manna. That's what God conveys through Moshe to the Jewish people about the manna. That it was a source of affliction and hunger, this food that God fed the Jewish people, which is a very strange way of discussing manna, especially as we know, the word Vaya'ancha is the exact same word the Torah uses regarding the 10th day of the month of Tishrei, otherwise known as Yom Kippur. What is Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur is a fast day. And God instructs us in the Torah that we have to afflict our souls. V'inisem es nafsho seichem, you shall afflict your souls. The word v'inisem and vayancha is the same root word. So Moshe refers to manna, which was being fed to us on a silver platter every day, just showed up right there outside our homes. When we were in the desert, God compares that to the day that we do not eat, the day that is a fast day. Why would God refer to it that way? And the reason is because it's actually teaching us something very powerful. And that is that the hunger is not created by how much food we have. Right? In other words, if a person is on a full stomach, will they be full or will they be hungry? Well, that's not a clear answer. There isn't a clear answer to that question. If the person just ate a hearty meal, but they don't have any food for their next meal, the common person will be starving, because in their mind they're already worrying about how they're going to get food for their next meal. Whereas someone who ate very little, they're not on a full stomach at all, but they know they have reserve. they know they have a refrigerator filled with food, a pantry filled with food, then they will not be as hungry as the person on the full stomach, because their mind knows that they have what to rely on. But which person is the most satisfied person? Not the person with a full stomach, or not the person that has reserves, but the person who knows that I can trust that God will provide me with what I need tomorrow, and they go to sleep with a calm mind. Not worried. They don't need to have the reserve in their pocket. They don't need to know where it's going to come from. They don't have to have a confirmation and reassurance that the delivery will be made in the morning. They just know that God loves me and God will provide for me as He did every single day. One of the most powerful stories I've ever heard was from a gentleman who was a little child in the Warsaw Ghetto during the Holocaust. And he described how his father, how there were children literally dying from hunger every day on the streets. And thank God he and his brother and his parents had a little space in an apartment, and they still had food. And he said that there was one day that we just had a half a loaf of bread left, and there were children begging on the streets for people to give them food. And so my father took the half loaf we had, which is all we had. It's all they had for 4 of us. And my father cut it in half. And then he took pieces from that half and he threw it down from the window to these children who were starving. And we told our father, "Father, what are you doing? This is the only food that we have. What are we going to eat tomorrow?" And my father answered me, he said, "Morgen wird Gott sorgen." Tomorrow, God's going to provide. Today is today, we have for today, and tomorrow God is going to provide us with what we need. And he instilled in his child in real time, in a very, very real way, where there were people dying from hunger before their eyes, that God provides every day. And this guy lived to tell the story. I saw a video of him telling the story. He lived to tell the story. That is the most powerful human being that there can be. A person who lets go of control and can truly rely on, trust in God. And the reason why food in particular is it's a basic need, as we know from Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It is the very, very basic need, right? Air, water, food is something that every single person needs. And God put us through a process in the desert, which was a process where we slowly relinquish the need to get security from ourselves, to give over that security to getting security from God. God gives it was a 40-year process. And that's how long it may take, maybe a lifelong, right? Where a person says, I don't need to worry about this. God's taken care of me until now, and he will continue to take care of me, even though I have no idea, realistically, practically, how this is going to come about. This is the height of trust. It's interesting that the word for worry in Hebrew is da'aga. And the way you spell the word da'aga is actually with 4 letters. And it's the first 4, it's 4 of the first 5 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. So the first 5 letters are Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Daled, Hey. Those are the first 5 letters. And da'aga is spelled with an Aleph, Gimel, Daled, Hey. It's missing 1 letter, the Beis. What does the Beis stand for? A Beis stands for bitachon, trust. When a person has bitachon, there's nothing that they worry about. Daiga goes out the window. The reason why there's daiga is because it's lacking the beis, it's lacking the bitachon, the trust. The moment a person trusts, they become the most powerful being that a human can be, and that's because they are no longer human, but they are human being fueled by the divine. A human fueled by the divine is the most powerful being that a person can possibly be. There's a beautiful story with Reb Zusha of Anipoli, one of the great, great Hasidic masters of about 250 years ago. And Reb Zusha, in the town that he lived, of Anipoli, there were kids like every town and city has. Kids love to have fun. And what type of fun did they have 250 years ago? Well, when it was rainy and the streets were muddy, they used to put a board, the kids would put a board over a little hole in the street, that people would step on so they're not stepping into the puddle. And what the kids would do for fun is when someone was about to step on the board, they would pull out the board. The guy was mindlessly walking and not paying attention. They would pull out the board, and the guy would end up slipping into the puddle and then slipping into the mud, and they got the laugh of their life. Of course, not a very beautiful game to play, but kids are kids. And one day they were playing this game and not realizing that the person that was about to walk on the board was Reb Zusha of Anipoli himself, this great holy, godly man. They pulled out the board, and Reb Zusha falls down. And when he falls down, they look and they realize, oh my goodness, look who we just played this prank on. And the ringleader of the kids was devastated by what he just did, and he went running home and he told his father what he did. And he said, what should I do? What should I do? His father says, you know what? Reb Zusha is a very holy man, and he prays for many hours every morning. And after he prays, he spends many hours studying. And he fasts. He must be famished. What we're going to do to make up for this is we're all going to get together tomorrow morning, our family. We're going to prepare a delicious tray of food for him, a beautiful meal, and you'll bring it over and give it to him, and in that way you'll sort of make up. And so the boy said, fantastic. And the whole family got together the next morning, and they prepared this beautiful tray of all different types of foods and delicacies. And this boy marches to the synagogue where Reb Zusha would study after he prayed with this tray of food. He walks in, it was around 12 noon. He walks in, Reb Zusha is sitting there reliably. He goes over to Reb Zusha and puts onto the table this beautiful tray in front of him, and then he leaves. And the boy leaves, and he feels very good about himself. While he's leaving, there's a man in a side room that suddenly he hears someone collapse. And his family was standing outside. They hear someone collapse. They come running into the side room to see who it was. Who was this man? This man was the man that we call the shamish. The shamish of the shul is a caretaker. And they revive him. They say, is everything okay? He says, oh my goodness, you can't believe what just happened. He said, what happened? He said, let me tell you, every single day after Reb Zusha finishes his prayers, which is around this time of day, Reb Zusha sits down at the table to study, and before he studies, he's famished. So he wants to eat something. He says, Tata, Father in heaven, please give me some food. And every day, I, the shamish, I'm the caretaker here, and I take care of him, I bring in food for him, right? And he said, but it bothers me, because every day he says, Father, he calls out to Father in heaven, to give him food, and I'm the one who gives him the food. So he's asking God for the food, and I provide it for him. You want God? You think God's giving you the food? Let God give you the food. So I had enough of this, and I decided today, for the first time, that when he says, Tata, Father, give me food, I'm not going to show up. I'm not coming with food. We'll see how much his Father in heaven gives him food, how much God gives him food. And he says, I could not believe it. Reb Zusha said, Tata, I'm hungry, please provide me with food. And a second later, your son walks in with this huge tray and provides the food. And now I realized that all of the food that I always provide him with is really God providing him. And if I don't show up, God has another agent to provide him with the food. You see, this is living with trust. This is power. This is reaching beyond the limits of the human and living in the divine. And the way we do this is by testing ourselves and pushing ourselves. When we feel insecure about something, which happens all the time, we just say, it will be okay. I'm going to this time trust in God. We start with small things and we see how things work out. And it grows to bigger things. And the more we trust in God, the more God shows up. As the verse says, Baruch HaGever Asher Yiftach BaHashem. Blessed is the man who trusts in God, meaning that we need to show up trusting in God. And then as the verse continues, Vahaya Hashem Miftacho, God will be his security. God will be his security and be there for him. We have to do our job. We do our job and say, God, I know you love me and I trust you that you will take care of me. And that's when the magic begins.